Hello, and welcome to the Oral History Series regarding St. Joseph's Parish. This series is primarily focused on capturing the perspectives of current and former parishioners of St. Joe's. Today I am pleased to welcome Suzanne Doerge and Joe Gunn, who will be sharing their perspectives and experiences about St. Joseph's Parish in Ottawa. Welcome, Suzanne and Joe.
Thanks, Terry.
So, when did you start coming to St. Joe's?
We were just discussing that on the way over here. I think it was 1995, eh? Yes, 1995. Our kids were 2, and we knew we wanted a community where we could be with our children and have a spiritual, religious home where they could grow up in a community.
And why did you choose St. Joe's?
You know, we did some looking around. Myself, I was not raised Catholic. I was a practicing Quaker, but had been very inspired by our years in Central America and liberation theology and the whole experience of God being a God of the poor, and that social justice is intimately a part of understanding of the gospel. And we were delighted to find that St. Joe's was a space that had some understanding of that. And so it was a place where we could raise our children in an environment of reflecting on the scripture and practicing in community with a belief in social justice.
Super, thank you. Now, Joe, you've been actively involved in social outreach, both at St. Joe's and the greater community. Why did you choose to become so actively involved?
Well, when we came to Ottawa, I was recently hired with the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops to do the social affairs, social justice work. So the logical thing to look for was, how is that lived out in community? And we found St. Joe's as being a home to be able to do that. The refugee outreach committee, the supper table, the women's center, the extra events that were held to raise consciousness around Indigenous issues, around poverty, and so on. That's why St. Joe's was a place to actually try to live this out, and so that's really important. You have to think and act as a Catholic. So it just became the logical place to do that because of so many people so heavily engaged before we ever arrived here. And so it felt like home, Terry, really.
Now, you went on, and in the last couple of years, you wrote a book, Journeys to Justice. What prompted you to share your thoughts and write this book?
Right. Well, the book is when you're not smart enough to write your own book, what you do is you interview smart people. So there's 12 stories where I interviewed people that were involved in justice work, where they move the yardsticks forward. So Sister Marie Zeroni, working in Northern Canada with all of the oblate bishops, to write 3 pastoral letters on domestic abuse, violence against women in parishes, and then 3-year campaigns to educate people about that. Tony Clark, who worked on writing the pastoral letters, the Labor Day statements of Catholic bishops on social issues, the famous Labor Day Statement of 1983 on a just economy. Some people who, in other churches, the Mennonite man, Bill Jensen, who started the private sponsorship of refugees around the time of the so-called boat people. And the churches now in Canada, one of the first the countries that had private sponsorship of refugees. These are all things started by people of faith working together. And those are stories that are really worth being told. And one of the great stories is, you know, when I first came to town and began work with the Aboriginal Rights Coalition, which was an ecumenical group, it was housed right next door in the old Oblate Hall. And the Oblates even gave free rent for a while to that project to get going. So St. Joe's was tied right into those larger ecumenical movements.
That's interesting and informative. Thank you very much. Now, Suzanne, I remember you being involved in a sacred dance at St. Joe's. I don't remember Joe being involved.
No, I was hoping we could get him involved today on video.
Would you share with us your experience in this ministry?
Yes. You know, it was a real delight for me when I came to St. Joe's and discovered there was this sacred dance or liturgical dance ministry. Marlene Bosch, of course, had organized it and convened it for many years. And to walk into that space was very important in terms of having an experience of where you can experience prayer through your body and invite other people to do that. To be able to celebrate the prayers and the hymns with the whole of your being was a beautiful thing to be a part of. There were a community of dancers that had been together for a long time. Kate McDonald, Helen Zettel, Petra Hughes joined us over the years, and many other dancers who came and went. And over time, there was a time when I started a youth group of teens, and to see teens claiming their space, and for me it was also important because as women, here we are in a church that also I felt comfortable being here because there's space here for women to offer reflection, to be part of a real integral part of the service. So to also for women to be dancing and moving through the church for me was about claiming space as women within a Catholic church, and that was a great prayerful act to be a part of.
Super. Now, many parents have met with challenges in encouraging their children to attend Mass. From your perspectives, what do you think needs to be done or tried?
Well, one of the things that St. Joe's does really well, or at least we did before the pandemic, was remember when the kids would come up with the different emblems of there would be butterflies and there would be doves and so on. Well, that started because many of us were protesting, as the Pope was protesting at the time and saying no to war in Iraq, and outside the U.S. Embassy. And Mary Murphy, who was the parish worker here at one time, saw our kids with these doves, peace doves, and said, we've got to bring that into the church. And so for years, then the kids would come into Mass and be part of the ceremony, but it began because of a kind of a peace manifestation of people in the streets brought back into the parish setting. But the other experience that our kids had is when they decided to be involved about child soldiers, and they cycled from Ottawa off to Newfoundland with several of the kids. One of them, Phil, was on the unicycle, but they were brought right into Mass with their bikes. Father blessed the bikes, the congregation said a prayer over them, and off they went. So St. Joe's encouraged the younger people and then younger teens to play a role, and I think that was important for our kids.
Yeah. Do you have anything else, Sam?
I would echo the same. I mean, I was part of those birds and butterflies, and the kids come running in, their excitement of grabbing them and going up and claiming the space was so important. I think also the fact, even the fact that St. Joe's pre-pandemic has this gathering in the circle. I mean, just choosing the space where children also can run up the aisle and make noise in the back, and to have that kind of openness, I think has meant a lot. But also as they grow older, how do they stay, which I think is part of your question. Yes. I'm thinking of our daughter who had the great privilege of singing here for many years. We just talked to her yesterday, and she just got asked to sing in an oblate parish in Vancouver, where she now lives.
Wow.
And it was that singing that's brought her back. Maybe she wouldn't go to church at all these days, but the singing has brought her back, and that's where she found so much meaning in the parish, was through voice. So I think there is that piece of finding a connection of something that allows young people to express their talents and their interest, and finding a place to express that in the parish, and I think that stays with them.
Super. Thank you. Now, as you look back over your time at St. Joe's, who has been the person or persons you respected the most?
Well, one of the people that I respected is no longer with us, but you know him very, very well, Rolly LaRue.
Oh, yes.
I knew Rolly LaRue when I was in my 20s. I kind of worshipped him from on high and from afar. He was the national chair of the Canadian Catholic Organization for Development and Peace when I was in my 20s and joined the National Council. I heard of this fellow Rolly LaRue. So here I come to Ottawa, and there's Rolly in the pews, you know, still firing away. He helped you on the history, and he served on the finance committee and played many other roles in the parish. So I'd have to mention Rolly.
Most definitely. And what about you, Suzanne? Anybody?
I
comes
think
to
of
mind?
Burley too, and I think of that there's so many people in the parish that they have really amazing lives and have had amazing lives, and we don't always know. I just look across sometimes and I think, wow, especially many of the new Canadians or people who might be refugees who are in the parish, like, what are the stories they bring and the history they bring? And they probably are very courageous people in their own countries and now finding themselves here. I also want to mention Jamie Lobach, just because with the sacred dance, he always he was willing to really work with us to find ways to make sacred dance and music work together, as well as Marlene Bosch and the long history that she helped to keep sacred dance a part of the parish.
Good. Now, as we come to the end of the interview, do you have any final thoughts about that you wish to share about St. Joe's?
One thing I would say that I'm very proud of, to my knowledge, St. Joe's is the only parish in Ottawa where women get a regular chance to prepare and deliver reflections. And I've done that myself, but I would be more than willing to step back and not do it anymore so that we could create more space, especially for younger women and I know it's difficult with, you know, young parents and so on, but we have to create space for those women to be heard because they do so very, very well. So that's a kind of a challenge for the future and one of the most exciting things about St. Joe's.
And Suzanne?
Yeah, that's of course is very important to me as well, along with attempts at inclusive language, you know, so that's not all about a male God and a male understanding of religion, but that there's that inclusiveness and work toward that, and also the inclusiveness with new Canadians or people who are racialized that are in the parish. And I think that whole spirit of inclusion and opening and being willing to change and evolve with the times. Gays and lesbians, I mean, how important is that to create a space where gays and lesbians can be open? So I just really respect that in St. Joe's and celebrate its journey to continue on that way.
Well, I'd like to thank you both for coming today and sharing your experiences about St. Joe's. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing this.